الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Continuing from our last lesson, the Mu'allif rahimahullah, he says معنعن كعن سعيد عن كرم ومبهم ما فيه راو لم يسم معنعن كعن سعيد عن كرم ومبهم ما فيه راو لم يسم. Meaning mu'an'an is like, he gives an example from Sa'id, from Karam. And Mubham is what is in it a narrator who has not been named. So a chain of narration that has a narrator that his name was not mentioned. So we'll take the first line of poetry, mu'an'anun ka'an Sa'idin an Karam. The mu'an'an, it is when they say from so and so. Fulan and Fulan. Fulan and Fulan. So mu'an'an here is referring to the term an. The term an. When it comes to transmitting a hadith, we mentioned there's ways that a hadith is transmitted. And those ways sometimes they're clear, like he heard it directly from the individual, and sometimes it is clear that he did not hear from this individual. For example, when he says سمعت وأخبرني, this is clear that he heard from this individual. And then there are other times where he says ذكروا أخبروا عن. These types of narrations, it's clear that he didn't hear from this individual. But you have a third sequence, which is an. An has ihtimalat. The ihtimal here is sometimes maybe he did hear it from him, or maybe he didn't hear it from him. He didn't make it clear whether he heard it or not. He left it vague. So this is where the ulama single out this type of sequence, the an. The reason being is, it could be that he heard it, and it could be he didn't hear it. So what is the solution to this problem? How do we find out whether this individual heard from this individual? When he says an, did he hear it or did he not hear it? So the ulama, they have steps. And the first thing that they try to verify is whether he is a mudallis or not. So the first thing that they try to establish is whether he was a mudallis. So that's the first thing you need to identify, if this individual was a mudallis. And regarding tadlis, inshallah, it will come in the line of poetry, line 18. We'll speak about it more later on. So if he is a mudallis, that means you need to dig further into this individual and find out whether he was doing tadlis and why he did tadlis. That's the first thing. If he isn't a mudallis and there's no tadlis there, then you move on to the next step, which is establishing mu'asara, which is coexisting. Did this individual coexist with the individual that he's narrating from? So that's step number 2. After clearing out that he's not a mudallis, you move on to coexisting, mu'asara. When it comes to mu'asara, it's either he did coexist with him or he didn't coexist with him. If he did coexist with him, asarahu, then that goes into levels. But if he didn't coexist with him, lam yu'asir, yani the hadith is da'if. There's an inqita' in the chain. There's a breakage in the chain. So your research in that chain stops there. The chain is da'if. Now, he did coexist him and he did meet him. He coexisted with him and he did meet him. The first option is he did meet him and he narrated from him. They coexisted, he met him and he narrated from him. It is clear that he narrated and he took a hadith from this individual. There is no dispute between the ulama in that. The dispute is they coexisted, but they did not meet. عاصره لكن لم يلاقيه. He did not meet him. So the scholars, they differed into two. You have those who accept it, and they say there is no issue as long as he coexisted with him, but he did not meet him, his hadith is maqbool. His hadith is maqbool, and this is the position of Imam Muslim. He coexisted with him, but whether he met him or not has not been established, then his hadith is accepted. As for the other party, Imam Bukhari's madhab, if he did not meet him, his hadith is rejected. His hadith is rejected. Sufficient is not enough as coexisting. So he has to have met him for his hadith to be accepted in the narration of An. And this is where there's a difference between the narration of Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. This is why the ulama take the narration of Imam Bukhari awla than the narrations of Imam Muslim, because of the extra condition which is meeting the individual. The extra step that Imam Bukhari goes into making sure these two individuals have met. And this is why his hadith is considered asah min the hadith of Imam Muslim. So these are the steps that you need to go through to identify the an, whether this narration was muttasil or there is inqita' in the sanad. We said first one, identify if he was a mudallis. If he's not a mudallis, identify if he coexisted. If he coexisted, identify if they have met. If they have met, no one has an issue in that. If they didn't meet, Imam Muslim accepts his narration. Imam Bukhari rejects his narration. The next line is وَمُبْهَبٌ مَا فِيهِ رَاوٍ لَمْ يُسَمْ. مُبْهَمٌ مَا فِيهِ رَاوٍ لَمْ يُسَمْ. So the mubham, it is when a person in the chain of narration, chain of narration is not mentioned. Who this individual in the chain of narration, his name is not given, nothing about him is identified. الراوي في سند أو في متن لا يعرف. هذا هو المبهم. راو في سند أو متن لا يعرف. من هو? So it comes in the form of the chain, where you'll find a person in the chain that is not named, and also you'll find it in the text. You'll find in the text that a person is not named. This individual was not named. And we'll have examples of both, inshallah. Example of regarding a chain that contains a person that was not named is a hadith found in Sunan Abi Dawood, hadith number 14. Hadith number 14. Imam Abi Dawood, rahimahullah, he says, فقال حدثنا زهير بن حرب حدثنا وكيع عن الأعمش عن رجل عن ابن عمر أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا أراد حاجة لا يرفع ثوبه حتى يدنو من الأرض. So the chain of narration, he says, حدثنا, narrated to us by Zuhair ibn Harb. So we identify the individual here. حدثنا وكيع, identified another individual. عن الأعمش, identified another individual. عن رجل, a man. Who is this man? Is he trustworthy? Is he a liar? Can we take his hadith? He's Mubham. He's not identified. So this is what they mean by في السند رجل مبهم. There's a man that's not identified. And this is why it's important to understand the an'an. Here we have Waqi' عن الأعمش عن رجل. And A'mash was known for tadlis. A'mash was known for tadlis. That's the first thing we said when you go to narrations of an'an, you need to identify what? If the person is known for tadlis. He did this to hide somebody in that chain of narration, whether it is because the individual is a weak narrator, or is an individual that his narration is not taken, and so on. We'll explain that further in tadlis. That the Messenger ﷺ, if he wanted to relieve his needs, he would not lift his thawb up until he lowered himself to the ground. So from the adab of relieving yourself, if you are out, is to not lift your garment up until you are lower to the ground. So this is an example of a mubham in the chain. And because this individual is unknown, the initial hukum of the hadith is that is da'if. The initial hukum of the hadith is da'if. But this is from the hadith that is you're able to fix. You're able to change. By finding other chains of narrations that identify who this individual was. So sometimes this hadith will come in multiple chains of narrations. In one of the chains, they mention who this individual was. So he may be mubham in this chain of narration, but in another chain of narration, he's not mubham. So this is from the aqsam of da'if that you're able to fix. You're able to fix by identifying this individual from a different narration. And we said mubham can happen in the text as well. We can find the text of the Messenger ﷺ, there's a man that was mentioned. For example, in hadith that's found in Sahih Muslim, hadith number 2548, B. Sometimes a single hadith will have multiple chains. And Imam Muslim would break it, each hadith by its chain. So he says in the hadith that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu says, قال رجل يا رسول الله من أحق بحسن الصحبة قال أمك ثم أمك ثم أمك ثم أبوك ثم أدناك أدناك. So Abu Hurairah says, قال رجل يا رسول الله. A man said to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this man is mubham. You don't know who this individual that asked the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was not identified. He asked him, who is most deserving of my companionship? Who is most deserving of my companionship? The Messenger ﷺ said, your mother, then your mother, then your mother, then your father, and then those nearest to you. So the ones that are deserving of your companionship, the ones that deserve your time to be spent with is your mother, your mother, your mother, then your father, then those who are nearest to you. Does this have an effect in the hadith? No. The mubham in a text has no effect on the hadith. If the Sahabi narrates an individual in the text, that individual has no effect on the hadith. Then the Mu'allif rahimahullah, he continues on and he says, وَكُلُّ مَا قَلَّتْ رِجَالُهُ عَلَى وَضِدُّهُ ذَاكَ الَّذِي قَدْ نَزَلَا وَكُلُّ مَا قَلَّتْ رِجَالُهُ عَلَى وَضِدُّهُ ذَاكَ الَّذِي قَدْ نَزَلَا. Which means all those whose transmitters are few, it is elevated. So if the transmitters, those who are narrating the hadith, there is less of them, this isnad is elevated, ali. And its opposite is that one which has descended. That one which has descended. So the more narrators are in a single chain, then the sanad is descending. And the sanad is not as elevated or as strong as the previous sanad. So this is a matter that is pertaining to the amount of narrators in a sanad. This is a matter that's pertaining to the amount of narrators in a sanad. So he says, وَكُلُّ مَا قَلَّتْ رِجَالُهُ عَلَى. So every time that its narrators are less, its sanad is higher. It's elevated. وَضِدُّهُ, the opposite of that is nazala. The opposite of that, the more there is, then it is considered, it's known as nazil. So here you have sanadun ali and sanadun nazil. The ulama, they classified sanadun ali, a chain that is elevated, and a chain that is descending. Nazil. This is applied in two ways. This term, nazil and ali, is applied in two ways. The first one, it is applied to a specific hadith. A single hadith can have a sanad that is ali or a sanad that is nazil in a single hadith. An example of that is a hadith that was narrated by Imam al-Bukhari. He says, ثلاث من كن فيه وجد حلاوة الإيمان. ثلاث من كن فيه وجد حلاوة الإيمان. Imam al-Bukhari narrates this hadith with two different chains. He narrates this hadith with two different chains. The first of the chains is, he says, حدثنا محمد ابن مثنى قال حدثنا عبد الوهاب الثقفي قال حدثنا أيوب عن أبي قلابة عن أنس عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he says حدثنا محمد ابن مثنى, one narrator. حدثنا عبد الوهاب الثقفي, second narrator. حدثنا أيوب, third narrator. عن أبي قلابة, fourth narrator. عن أنس, fifth narrator. There are five narrators in this hadith of Anas radiallahu anhu. In the second chain of narration, he says, حدثنا سليمان ابن حرب قال حدثنا شعبة عن قتادة عن أنس. So, حدثنا سليمان ابن حرب, one narrator. حدثنا شعبة, second narrator. حدثنا قتادة, third narrator. عن أنس, the fourth narrator. So the one with the lesser narrators is known as Isnad Ali. Is known as Isnad Ali. So which is Salman ibn Harb and Shu'bah and Qatada and Anas. There are fewer men in this chain of narration. This is why it's considered Sanadun Ali compared to the other Sanad. So this is only applicable when it's compared to another Sanad. The effect of Ali and Nazil only applies to when it's compared to another Sanad. Which of the two Sanads is Nazil and Ali? So from the two Sanads, we find that the Sanad of Sulaiman ibn Harb is Sanadun Ali, and the Sanad of Muhammad ibn Muthanna, Sanadun Nazil. Sanadun Nazil. Going back to the hadith, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, ثلاث من كن فيهن وجد حلاوة الإيمان. Three things that if an individual finds it within himself, he finds the sweetness of Iman. He finds the sweetness of Iman. Sometimes many people, you find them, they say, I don't have the sweetness of Iman. I don't feel the sweetness of Iman. I want to feel the sweetness of Iman. What can I do to feel the sweetness of Iman? I want to have that feeling. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, من كان الله ورسوله أحب إليه مما سواهما. If Allah and His Messenger is most beloved to you than anything else, you will find the sweetness of Iman. For example, when you hear the Quran, you're not moved, you're not touched by it. When you hear the stories of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the things that he went through and the struggles and the hardships and his character, You're not moved by it. But when you hear the story of a celebrity, of somebody that you love, and you start to feel that in your heart, and you start crying, and you start feeling sympathy, you start feeling things for this individual, then you have placed love in this individual that is greater than that of Allah and His Messenger. And this is why you don't feel that iman, that halawa of that iman. When Allah and His Messenger was mentioned, you didn't feel nothing. But when somebody you love was mentioned, you felt something. This is an indication there is deficiency in your iman, and this is why you don't feel the halawat of iman, the sweetness of iman. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he continues to say, وَمَنْ أَحَبَّ عَبْدًا لَا يُحِبُّهُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. And when an individual loves somebody, he does not love him except for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing that I love this individual for except that I love him for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you come to see this individual, you feel this happiness, this joy, because this individual is bringing you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This happiness, this joy that you feel is part of iman. This is a taste of iman. When you come and you meet this individual, you're always there to seek something, you're always there to need something. There isn't that feeling of joy and happiness in seeing this individual. That means you don't love this individual for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You love this individual for a purpose. If that purpose is missing, that feeling, that joy is missing. So you need to assess that relationship. Why do I love this individual? And then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, وَمَنْ يَكْرَهُ أَنْ يَعُودَ فِي الْكُفْرِ بَعْدَ إِذْ أَنْقَذَهُ اللَّهُ. And the one that hates to be returned back to kufr, the disbelief that he was upon after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has saved him. And this is very clear and very evident. And you can ask all the Muslim reverts or converts, whatever you want to call it, when they embrace Islam. When they embrace Islam, that feeling, that iman that they have inside them is different to somebody that was born as a Muslim. Why? Because he embraced the haqq. Iman has entered his heart. Iman has entered his heart. And this is why he feels the halawa of iman. Because firstly, he never had the halawa of iman. Because he was never a mu'min. He had nothing to believe in. But when he accepted iman, he tasted what iman is. And that is the sweetness of iman. So he tasted what iman is. And this is what's known as halawatul iman. And you see them joyful, crying, feeling what they have embraced. After that feeling, sometimes the person over time, he doesn't really practice, or he's not really connected to his religion, that iman becomes lower. If that iman becomes so low to the point that he's not scared about falling into kufr, then his iman has decreased. The halawa, that taste of iman, has been removed from his heart. Because the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, كَمَا يَكْرَهُ أَن يُلْقَى فِي النَّارِ. Just the way that he dislikes to be thrown into the hellfire. He hates kufr so much. He hates to return into that, just like the way he hates to be in the hellfire or to fall into the fire. So when the person starts playing with fire and he gets close to the fire and so on, he's not fearful of the fire anymore. So he's not scared to put his hand in there, to touch it. He starts playing with the fire and so on. So when the Muslim starts to let go of his religion and he starts going around the shubuhat and the shahwat, then he starts to decrease his halawa for iman to the point where falling into kufr, he's not really scared of it. Because he's so engulfed in the shubuhat and the shahwat. And that's why he does not sense the halawa of iman, because of what he's indulging in. Continuing on into our lesson. So we said the isnad, the effect of Nazil and Ali is in accordance to the sanad. Sanad going back to the hadith. It is also applied to an individual. It also applies to an individual. The chain of this individual going back to a specific individual. The chain of this individual, the one who's narrating, going back to a specific individual. So here we said going back to a specific hadith. That was the first example. The second one is going back to a specific individual. An example of that is also that which is found in Sahih al-Bukhari. We find that Imam Bukhari narrates some ahadith from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam with only 3 narrators between him and the Messenger. With only 3 narrators between him and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So here Imam Bukhari, specifically to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has 3 individuals between him in regards to the person, from a person to a person, 3 individuals. And these are known as thulathiyat al-Bukhari. The 3 narrators of Bukhari. The 3 narrators of Bukhari. There's only 3 narrators between Bukhari and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. An example of that is Imam Bukhari says, حدثنا مكي ابن إبراهيم قال حدثنا يزيد ابن أبي عبيد عن سلمة قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So you have Maki ibn Ibrahim, Yazid ibn Abi Ubaid, and Salama. 3 individuals from Imam Bukhari to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also, Imam Bukhari has other chains that go back to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is Isnad Nazil. This is the lowest of chains that Imam Bukhari has going back to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is specifically to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has a chain that consists of 9 narrators. That consists of 9 narrators that go back to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he narrates from 9 individuals before reaching the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in comparison to the sanads that the Imam Bukhari has, the one that he narrated with 3 individuals is Sanadun Ali. The one he narrated with the 9 individuals is Sanadun Nazil. So here he chose Sanad Ali to narrate from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and here he chose Sanad Nazil to narrate from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Sanad is حدثنا إسماعيل حدثني أخي عن سليمان عن محمد بن عتيق عن ابن شهاب عن عروة ابن زبير أن زينب بنت أبي سلمة حدثته عن أم حبيبة بنت أبي سفيان عن زينب بنت جحش. These 9 narrators all narrated from Imam Bukhari narrated from all of them until the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So from Imam Bukhari to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sanad Ali is his thulathiyat. And the Sanad al-Nazil is the only single chain he has that contained 9 narrators. So his most Nazil Sanad is this Sanad, contained 9 narrators. So what is the benefit of understanding there is a Sanad Ali and Sanad Nazil? The benefit is, with Sanad al-Ali, it prevents errors. The lesser the people in the chain, the less errors that you'll find in the chain. And the more the people there are in the chain, the more the chances one of them is going to make a mistake. That one of them is going to make a mistake. If the qabr is from 3 people, it is easier to assess. If it's from 9 people, you have to assess each 9 and see their status. So al-nazil, its benefit is that it is easier to assess and less errors in that chain. عالي نعم جزاك الله خير عالي. Now the question is, which one is better, Ali or Nazil? Ali is always better. Ali is always better because less errors. But the ulama sometimes say there are occasions where Sanadul Nazil is better than Ali. And the reason being is Sanadul Nazil will contain something that the Ali did not have, that will benefit you, either liqa of this individual and that individual, or the sama' of this individual from that individual, or the relationship between this individual and that individual. So you may have a father and a son who attended the same gathering of a muhaddith, and they both narrate from this. And then later on, his father might narrate to the son the same hadith that they both heard from the shaykh. So the son now, he narrates from his father, from the shaykh. At the same time, the son can also narrate from the shaykh directly. But this sanad nazil, where he added his father in, he's showing the relationship between him and his father. So now he identified his father. حدثني أبي عن شيخه. And in the other sanad, straight away he went to his shaykh. So here they see the relationship between this individual and that individual, father, son. So this individual has been identified to be the father of fulan and fulan. So this is the benefit sometimes a sanad nazil would have over a sanad that is ali. Also sanad, this term sanad nazil and ali is also applied to the books as well. When you're trying to receive an ijazah, you try to go for an ijazah that has sanadun ali. If you're trying to seek an ijazah, you go for an ijazah that has sanadun ali, where the author of this book and you, there are less people in between that chain. And the best way to do that is by going to the nearest narrator that is alive to the author of that book. The nearest narrator that is alive to the author of that book. Sometimes you'll find narrators that live for 120 years. And he narrated to so many students. Some of them narrated to other students that have, he passed away, but he narrated to other students. If he is still alive, it is better for you to skip these other students that narrated from him and go directly to him. That way you achieve sanad ali. But if you go through these individuals, you have sanad nazil. So it's better that you go to the last living person that is closest to the author of the book to receive the ijazah. So you have a sanad ali. This is one of the benefits of having sanad ali. And then the Musannif, he says, وَمَا أُضِيفَ إِلَى الصَّحَابِ مِنْ قَوْلٍ وَفِعْلٍ فَهُوَ مَوْقُوفٌ زُكٍ. And we covered this in our lesson of مقطوع and موقوف. مقطوع and موقوف. We said that which is attributed to the companion is موقوف. مقطوع and مرفوع عفوا. That which is attributed to the companion is mawquf, and we said it has its ahkam, and there's different types of mawquf. That was regarding na'am. Marfu' hukm, and that was regarding the raf' of the sahabi to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But ala kulli hal, if you go back to the lesson of maqtu' and marfu', you'll find this line of poetry also addressed, inshallah. With that, we'll finish our lesson today, and then next week we'll start from the mursal. And the line of poetry with mursal also has the gharib hadith, which was covered in our last lesson regarding mutawatir and ahad hadith. صلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. وإياكم.